Millionaire CEO took his enemy's daughter on a date, risking it all for a forbidden love. Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Jeffrey Hall never expected his biggest revelation would come from a simple name tag at a conference dinner. 32 years of assumptions about family enemies were about to crumble in a single conversation. When Margot Butler introduced herself that March evening in Austin, neither realized they were crossing a line drawn 15 years ago by lawyers and misunderstandings. What started as polite business networking would become the foundation for healing generational wounds and discovering that sometimes your greatest competitor holds the key to your greatest success. In a world where business rivalry can span decades, two hearts were about to prove that truth, courage, and authentic connection can transform even the deepest family divisions into something beautiful. This is the story of how love conquered 15 years of corporate warfare, and how two brilliant minds discovered that their family's greatest mistake had prepared them for their greatest triumph. I apologize, but I believe there has been a seating arrangement error, Jeffrey Hall said politely, checking his conference badge against the table number displayed on the elegant centerpiece. The woman across from him looked up from her program, emerald eyes sparkling with amusement. Table 12, Austin Technology Innovation Conference. She gestured to the matching number on her own materials. Unless they have seated both of us incorrectly, I think we are exactly where we belong. Jeffrey took his seat, extending his hand with practiced professional courtesy. Jeffrey Hall, Hall Industries. Margot Butler, Butler Corporation. Her handshake was firm, confident, the grip of someone accustomed to boardroom negotiations. The recognition hit Jeffrey like a perfectly timed lightning strike. Butler Corporation, the Butler family. 15 years of his father speaking that name with a mixture of respect and regret, of competition that had driven both companies to excellence while keeping them forever apart. The Butler Corporation, Jeffrey repeated carefully, his business training keeping his voice neutral despite the internal earthquake. Your family has built quite an impressive company. Margot tilted her head, studying him with frank curiosity rather than the hostility he had somehow expected. And Hall Industries has been our most respected competition for as long as I can remember. My father always says you run the most ethical operation in Austin's technology sector. Ethical? The word escaped before Jeffrey could stop it. I was under the impression your family considered us somewhat less than trustworthy. Quite the opposite. Margot leaned forward slightly, her voice carrying genuine interest. Papa has always said that competing against Hall Industries made Butler Corporation better because you never cut corners or compromised your principles. He calls it honorable competition, the kind that elevates everyone involved. Jeffrey felt his carefully constructed understanding of family history shifting like sand beneath his feet. Honorable competition, he echoed slowly. You sound surprised. Margot's smile held a hint of mischief. Did you imagine we sat around plotting your downfall over Sunday dinner? Something like that, Jeffrey admitted, then immediately wondered why he was being so honest with someone he had met 90 seconds ago. How disappointing, Margot laughed, a sound that reminded Jeffrey of wind chimes on a spring evening. We actually spend most Sunday dinners discussing how to match your latest innovations. You have kept us quite busy these past few years. The conference speaker was being introduced, but Jeffrey found himself entirely focused on the woman across from him. Everything about Margot Butler contradicted his expectations. Instead of the cold corporate heiress he had imagined, she radiated warmth and intelligence. Her questions about his company came from genuine curiosity rather than competitive intelligence gathering. May I ask you something? Jeffrey said during the brief networking break between speakers. Of course. What made you choose to stay with the family business rather than pursuing your own path? It was a question that had haunted Jeffrey's own decision-making for years. Margot considered this thoughtfully, stirring her coffee with deliberate care. Who says I did not pursue my own path? I have a Master of Business Administration from Northwestern and a Bachelor of Fine Arts from the Art Institute of Chicago. I spend my days creating marketing campaigns that blend artistic vision with business strategy, and my evenings painting in galleries throughout Austin. The family business simply became the canvas where I could paint my largest dreams. You are an artist. It was not a question, but a statement of newfound understanding. I am many things, Margot replied with quiet confidence. Artist, businesswoman, daughter, innovator. I never understood why people assume you can only be one thing at a time. Jeffrey found himself leaning closer, drawn by her passion. That is exactly what our industry needs. People who see connections others miss. And what about you, Jeffrey Hall? What drives the man behind Hall Industries' transformation from manufacturing to technology innovation? The question caught him off guard with its directness. Most people asked about profit margins or market strategies. Margot was asking about his heart, the desire to build something meaningful, he answered honestly. My father created a solid foundation, but I wanted to construct something that could change how people live and work. Technology should serve humanity, not the other way around. That is beautiful, Margot said softly, and exactly what I would expect from someone whose company has maintained such integrity while achieving remarkable growth. Their conversation continued through the remainder of the conference, flowing seamlessly from business philosophy to personal dreams. Jeffrey discovered that Margot approached problems with an artist's creativity and a strategist's precision. She learned that Jeffrey balanced analytical thinking with genuine concern for his employees and community. As the evening concluded, Jeffrey faced a decision that felt monumentally significant despite its apparent simplicity. Would you be interested in continuing this conversation over coffee sometime? He asked, then quickly added, I find your perspective on integrating creativity with business strategy fascinating from a professional standpoint. Margot's smile suggested she understood exactly what he was really asking. I would enjoy that very much. Professional consultation, of course. Of course, Jeffrey agreed, though something in her eyes told him they both knew this had moved far beyond professional territory. As they exchanged business cards, Jeffrey realized that everything he thought he knew about the Butler family, about family rivals and inherited enemies, had been turned upside down in the span of 3 hours. Walking to his car, Jeffrey could not shake the feeling that his life had just changed direction entirely. Margot Butler was supposed to be his family's business adversary. Instead, she might be the most interesting person he had ever met. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Thank you for a fascinating evening. I look forward to our professional consultation. Margot. Jeffrey smiled, typing back, the pleasure was entirely mine. I have a feeling this is the beginning of a very interesting professional relationship. But as he drove through Austin's glittering downtown, Jeffrey knew that whatever was beginning between them would be anything but merely professional. 3 days later, Jeffrey found himself checking his appearance in his office bathroom mirror for the 3rd time that morning. Coffee with Margot Butler was scheduled for 10 o'clock at Austin's historic Driskill Hotel, neutral territory that felt appropriately professional yet intimate enough for genuine conversation. He arrived 5 minutes early, claiming a corner table that offered privacy while maintaining the open atmosphere of legitimate business discussion. When Margot entered wearing a sophisticated navy dress that somehow perfectly balanced professional authority with artistic flair, Jeffrey stood automatically, a gesture his mother had drilled into him since childhood. Thank you for making time in your schedule, Jeffrey said as they settled into their seats. Are you kidding? The opportunity to pick the brain of Hall Industries' visionary leader. Margot's eyes sparkled with humor. I should be thanking you for the competitive intelligence. Competitive intelligence, Jeffrey repeated with mock seriousness. I knew there was an ulterior motive. Their coffee arrived quickly, but neither seemed in any hurry to address the ostensible reason for their meeting. Instead, their conversation meandered through topics that revealed layers of personality and perspective. Tell me about the art, Jeffrey said eventually. How does someone balance creative expression with corporate responsibilities? Margot's face lit up with genuine enthusiasm. They are not separate worlds that need balancing. They are complementary perspectives that strengthen each other. When I approach a marketing challenge, I see colors, movement, emotional resonance. When I paint, I consider composition, target audience, message clarity. Art makes me a better businesswoman, and business gives my art purpose beyond personal expression. That is remarkable, Jeffrey said, meaning it completely. Most people compartmentalize their lives into separate boxes. Compartmentalization is the enemy of innovation, Margot replied with conviction. The best solutions emerge when you allow different parts of your experience to inform each other. Jeffrey leaned forward, intrigued. Can you give me an example? Last month, Butler Corporation was struggling with a campaign for sustainable manufacturing processes. Traditional approaches felt sterile, clinical, so I spent a weekend painting landscapes, really studying how nature creates harmony from diverse elements. That led to our Natural Innovation campaign, which presents technology as part of the environmental ecosystem rather than separate from it. Our client's sales increased 37% in the first quarter. Brilliant, Jeffrey breathed. You took artistic observation and translated it into business strategy. Exactly. And I suspect you do something similar, even if you do not recognize it as artistic thinking. Jeffrey paused, coffee cup halfway to his lips. What do you mean? Your reputation for ethical business practices, for treating employees as whole human beings rather than resource units, for considering community impact alongside profit margins. That is the thinking of someone who sees the bigger picture, who understands that business success and human flourishing can be part of the same composition. No one had ever described his business philosophy in those terms, but Margot was absolutely right. Jeffrey did approach Hall Industries as if he were creating something beautiful rather than merely profitable. You have given me a completely new way to think about what I do, he admitted. And you have shown me that there are business leaders who think beyond quarterly reports, Margot replied. Papa always said Hall Industries felt different from other competitors, but I never understood why until now. The mention of her father brought the family dynamic back into focus. Speaking of your father, how do you think he would feel about this conversation? Margot considered this seriously. He would be fascinated. Papa loves talking business with intelligent people, regardless of company affiliation. He judges people by their character and competence, not their corporate letterhead. That is generous, considering the history between our families. What history, exactly? Margot's question carried genuine curiosity rather than defensiveness. Jeffrey realized he had assumed she knew details he had never actually verified. The patent dispute from 2009, the collaboration that ended badly. I know there was some kind of legal complication that ended a joint project, Margot said slowly. But I was in high school, more concerned with college applications than corporate drama. What exactly happened? Honestly, Jeffrey set down his coffee cup. I am not entirely certain. I know both companies were working on environmental manufacturing processes. There were patent filings, lawyers became involved, and communication broke down. My father rarely discusses it, but I sense it was painful for him. Papa is the same way, Margot nodded. Whenever Hall Industries comes up, he gets this look, not angry, more like disappointed, sad, maybe. They sat in contemplative silence for a moment, both processing the realization that neither understood the full story of their family's complicated relationship. Perhaps, Jeffrey said carefully, that history does not have to define our professional interaction. I would like that very much, Margot agreed. In fact, I have a proposition for you. Jeffrey's pulse quickened at the word proposition spoken in Margot's confident tone. I am curating a small gallery showing next Friday evening. Local artists exploring the intersection of technology and creativity. Would you be interested in attending? From a business perspective, of course. You might find inspiration for Hall Industries' innovation processes. Jeffrey smiled at her careful addition of professional justification. I would be honored to attend. For business purposes, naturally? Naturally, Margot agreed, but her smile suggested they both understood this invitation crossed well beyond professional boundaries. As they prepared to leave, Jeffrey realized their conversation had lasted nearly 2 hours without either of them checking the time. More significantly, he felt energized and inspired in a way that had nothing to do with caffeine. Thank you for this, he said as they stood. I cannot remember the last time I had such a stimulating professional discussion. The pleasure was mine, Margot replied, then added with deliberate lightness, I look forward to showing you how art can enhance business vision. Walking back to his office, Jeffrey found himself analyzing every word of their conversation, looking for signs of mutual interest beyond professional courtesy. By the time he reached Hall Industries, he had concluded that Margot Butler was either the most sophisticated business networker he had ever encountered, or she was as intrigued by him as he was by her. Either way, Friday evening could not arrive quickly enough. The Meridian Gallery occupied a converted warehouse in Austin's bustling East Side, its industrial bones softened by warm lighting and carefully curated artwork. Jeffrey arrived fashionably late, having changed clothes 3 times before settling on dark jeans and a charcoal blazer that struck the right balance between professional and approachable. He spotted Margot immediately, even with her back turned. She wore a flowing emerald dress that complemented her eyes and moved like water as she gestured enthusiastically to a small group gathered around a large canvas. Her hair was swept into an elegant updo that revealed the graceful line of her neck, and Jeffrey found himself momentarily transfixed by the sight. Jeffrey! Margot's face lit up when she noticed him approaching. I am so glad you could make it. She introduced him to the gathered group, artists, gallery owners, and a few technology professionals who shared his interest in innovation. The conversation flowed easily, touching on creativity, business applications, and the evolving relationship between human artistry and technological advancement. What do you think of this piece? Margot asked, guiding Jeffrey toward a striking mixed media work that combined traditional paint with embedded LED elements. It is mesmerizing, Jeffrey said honestly. The way the light changes the entire composition depending on your viewing angle, it makes the observer part of the creative process. Exactly, Margot's enthusiasm was infectious. The artist calls it interactive reality, the idea that art should respond to and engage with its audience rather than existing in isolation. Like good business, Jeffrey observed. The most successful companies adapt to their customers rather than expecting customers to adapt to them. You see, this is exactly what I meant about artistic thinking enhancing business perspective. Their conversation was interrupted by an older gentleman with silver hair and paint-stained fingers. Margot, dear, you must introduce me to your friend. Professor Williams. This is Geoffrey Hall from Hall Industries. Geoffrey, Professor Williams was my mentor at the Art Institute. Hall Industries, the professor repeated thoughtfully. You are the company that has been revolutionizing sustainable manufacturing processes. We try to contribute positively to our community, Geoffrey replied modestly. Modest and handsome, Professor Williams' stage whispered to Margot. I approve. Margot blushed slightly, but maintained her composure. Professor Williams taught me that art without purpose is mere decoration, and purpose without beauty is mere function. And what is your purpose here tonight, Mr. Hall? The professor asked with twinkling eyes. Geoffrey glanced at Margot, whose expression suggested she was equally curious about his answer. I came to better understand how creativity and business can enhance each other. I am discovering that the lesson is more personal than I expected. Personal lessons are always the most valuable. Professor Williams nodded approvingly before excusing himself to greet other guests. He likes you, Margot observed as they moved toward the next exhibition area. Is that important? Professor Williams has exceptional judgment about people. If he approves of you, it means you are genuine. They paused before a series of smaller paintings, each depicting Austin landmarks rendered in bold, impressionistic strokes. These are beautiful, Geoffrey said. The artist captures something essential about each location. Thank you, Margot said quietly. Geoffrey turned to look at her sharply. These are yours. The artist's statement is right there. Margot pointed to a small placard beside the paintings. Geoffrey read aloud, Austin Through Creative Eyes by Margot Butler. These paintings explore the intersection of familiar landmarks and personal interpretation, suggesting that we all see our shared world through the lens of our individual experiences. He studied the paintings with new appreciation, seeing Margot's perspective rendered in color and texture. Her vision of Austin was vibrant, optimistic, and deeply loving, the work of someone who saw beauty and potential everywhere she looked. They are extraordinary, Geoffrey said softly. You have captured something I recognize but never noticed. That is the highest compliment an artist can receive, Margot replied, her cheeks flushed with pleasure. May I ask you something personal? Of course. Why did you invite me tonight, really? Margot was quiet for a long moment, studying her own artwork, as if seeing it through his eyes. Because you are not what I expected Geoffrey Hall to be, and I wanted to see if you might find me equally surprising. And I think I wanted to share something that matters to me with someone whose opinion has become important. The honesty in her voice made Geoffrey's chest tighten with emotion. Your opinion has become important to me as well. They stood in comfortable silence, surrounded by Margot's artistic vision of their shared city, both acutely aware that they had crossed another invisible line in their developing relationship. Would you like to see the rest of the exhibition? Margot asked eventually. I would, Geoffrey replied, but first, would you consider having dinner with me afterward? Somewhere we can continue this conversation without interruption. Margot's smile was radiant. I thought you would never ask. As they moved through the gallery, Geoffrey realized that everything about the evening, the art, the conversation, Margot's trust in sharing her creative work with him, was drawing him deeper into feelings he had not expected and was not entirely sure he could control. But for the first time in years, Geoffrey Hall was not interested in controlling anything. He was too busy falling for a woman who was supposed to be his family's business rival and was instead becoming someone he could not imagine living without. The restaurant Margot suggested was a small Italian place in South Austin, the kind of neighborhood gem that thrived on word of mouth rather than advertising. Tucked into a converted house with string lights creating intimate pools of warmth, It felt like stepping into someone's well-loved home. "How did you discover this place?" Jeffrey asked as they were seated at a corner table that offered privacy without isolation. "I painted the mural in their back dining room," Margot replied, nodding toward a vibrant depiction of Italian countryside that dominated the far wall. "The owner, Mrs. Castellano, commissioned it 3 years ago. We have been friends ever since." Jeffrey studied the mural with new appreciation. "You continue to amaze me. Is there any creative medium you have not mastered?" "Sculpture gives me trouble," Margot admitted with a laugh. "I think in 2 dimensions more easily than 3. Unlike business, where you clearly think in multiple dimensions simultaneously." Their conversation over dinner revealed layers of compatibility that went far beyond their initial professional attraction. They discovered shared values about family loyalty, business ethics, and community responsibility. Both had traveled extensively, but considered Austin home in a deep, rooted way. Both valued authenticity over appearance, substance over superficial success. "Tell me about taking over Hall Industries so young," Margot said as they shared a dessert that was almost too beautiful to eat. "That must have been intimidating." Jeffrey considered his answer carefully. "Terrifying would be more accurate. I had all this theoretical knowledge from Harvard, but suddenly I was responsible for real people's livelihoods, for carrying forward something my father had built with his own hands." "But you succeeded beyond anyone's expectations." "I had advantages," Jeffrey said modestly. "A solid foundation, excellent employees, and the motivation that comes from knowing failure would impact more than just myself." "And now, do you still feel that pressure?" "Different pressure," Jeffrey admitted. "Now I worry about whether I am building something meaningful or just chasing growth for its own sake. Success can become addictive in dangerous ways." Margot nodded thoughtfully. "Papa struggles with similar questions. He built Butler Corporation to provide security for our family, but now it has grown beyond what any one family needs. The question becomes, what is our responsibility to all the people who depend on the company's success?" "Exactly," Jeffrey said, surprised by how perfectly she understood the weight of inherited responsibility. "How do you balance personal desires with family obligations?" "Carefully," Margot replied with a wry smile. "And with the understanding that sometimes the best way to serve your family is to challenge family assumptions." Something in her tone suggested deeper meaning. "What kind of assumptions?" Margot hesitated, twirling her wineglass thoughtfully. "Old grudges, historic disappointments, the idea that some relationships are impossible because of past complications." Jeffrey felt his pulse quicken. "Are we talking about our families specifically?" "We might be," Margot said quietly. "Jeffrey, I need to tell you something. This evening, getting to know you better, it has been wonderful, but I would be dishonest if I did not acknowledge that continuing, whatever this is, might complicate things for both our families." "And how do you feel about that?" "I think," Margot said carefully, "that I am old enough to make my own decisions about relationships, and that both our families raised us to value integrity and authenticity above convenience." Jeffrey reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "I feel the same way. Whatever happened between our families 15 years ago, it has nothing to do with who we are or what we might choose to build together." "Together," Margot repeated softly, her fingers intertwining with his. "If you are interested in exploring that possibility." "I am very interested," Margot said, her voice barely above a whisper, but filled with conviction. They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked across the small table, both processing the significance of what they had just acknowledged. This was no longer about professional networking or even casual dating. They were choosing each other despite potential family complications, choosing personal happiness over inherited conflicts. "What happens next?" Jeffrey asked eventually. "Next, we see where this leads," Margot replied. "Honestly, openly, and with respect for both our families and ourselves." "That sounds perfect," Jeffrey said, bringing her hand to his lips for a gentle kiss that made Margot's breath catch slightly. As they left the restaurant, Jeffrey realized that everything in his life had shifted. Margot Butler was no longer the daughter of a family business rival. She was the woman who challenged his thinking, appreciated his values, and made him want to be the best version of himself. Walking Margot to her car, Jeffrey faced another moment of decision. "Would you be interested in having dinner again tomorrow night? I know a place with even better atmosphere than this." "Where?" "My house. I cook, and I promise the company will be exclusively focused on you." Margot's smile lit up the parking lot. "I would love that. But only if you let me bring dessert." "Deal," Jeffrey agreed, then added with mock seriousness, "though I should warn you, my cooking skills are largely theoretical." "Then it will be an adventure," Margot laughed. "I like adventures." As Jeffrey watched her drive away, he realized that Margot Butler had become the most important adventure of his life. And for the first time since taking over Hall Industries, he was excited about something that had nothing to do with quarterly reports or market expansion. He was excited about tomorrow night, and the night after that, and all the possibilities that lay ahead with a woman who was supposed to be impossible but felt like destiny. Jeffrey spent the entire next day questioning every decision he had ever made about his kitchen. Did he have enough serving dishes? Was his wine selection sophisticated enough? Had he been insane to suggest cooking for someone whose palate was clearly more refined than his abilities warranted? By 6 o'clock, his house smelled like garlic, herbs, and barely controlled panic. He had attempted his grandmother's recipe for chicken piccata, backed up by a green salad that could not possibly offend anyone, and pasta that came from a reliable box. When the doorbell rang at exactly 7, Jeffrey checked his reflection one final time and opened the door to find Margot holding a small bakery box and wearing a sundress that made his heart skip several important beats. "You look beautiful," he said honestly. "Thank you. You look terrified," she replied with gentle amusement. "Accurate assessment," Jeffrey admitted, leading her inside. "I may have overestimated my culinary abilities. Lucky for you, I brought dessert from the best bakery in Austin as insurance against dinner disaster," Margot said, setting her box on the kitchen counter and immediately moving to help with final preparations. Jeffrey's house reflected his personality: clean lines, comfortable furniture, and artwork that suggested genuine appreciation rather than interior designer selection. Margot noticed everything, from the family photographs on the mantel to the business books mixed with classic literature on his shelves. "This feels like you," she observed as they worked together in the kitchen. "Successful but not showy, comfortable but elegant." "Is that diplomatic language for boring but acceptable?" Jeffrey asked, tossing the salad with perhaps more vigor than necessary. "It is honest language for authentic and appealing," Margot corrected, bumping his shoulder playfully. "I like authentic much better than impressive." Dinner turned out better than Jeffrey had dared hope. Though he suspected Margot's enthusiastic praise was slightly inflated by kindness. What mattered was the conversation, which flowed even more easily in the privacy of his home than it had in public settings. "Tell me about your parents," Margot said as they moved to the living room with coffee and her bakery dessert. Lemon bars that were, in fact, perfect. "My mother died when I was 16, Jeffrey said quietly. "Cancer. It was difficult. My father essentially raised me through high school while building the company." "I'm so sorry," Margot said softly, her hand finding his automatically. "She would have liked you," Jeffrey continued. Mom believed that the best relationships were built on friendship and mutual respect rather than just attraction. Smart woman. What was she like? Kind, funny. She could make anyone feel welcome in our home, and she had this way of seeing the best in people, even when they could not see it themselves. Margot squeezed his hand gently. You have that quality too. Do I? You saw past 15 years of family complications to give me a chance. You see potential in your employees, innovation possibilities in creative thinking, beauty in mixing business with art. Yes, Jeffrey, you definitely inherited your mother's ability to see the best in people. They talked late into the evening, sharing stories about family, dreams, fears, and hopes. Jeffrey learned that Margot had been close to both parents, but sometimes felt pressure to prove herself beyond her family name. Margot discovered that Jeffrey's drive for success was motivated more by desire to honor his mother's memory and support his employees than by personal ambition. Can I ask you something that might be presumptuous? Margot said as they sat on his couch, her feet tucked under her in a gesture of complete comfort. Anything. What do you want, Jeffrey? Not for Hall Industries or your family legacy or Austin's technology sector. What do you want for your own life? The question caught him off guard with its directness and importance. Jeffrey was quiet for a long moment, considering not just what he should say, but what was actually true. I want to build something that matters, he said finally. Not just a successful company, but a life that contributes something positive to the world. I want to find someone who challenges me to be better while accepting who I am. He paused, looking directly at Margot. I want to stop feeling like I am going through the motions of a successful life and start actually living one. And what would that look like? Actually living. Sharing experiences with someone who sees the world differently than I do. Taking risks based on feelings rather than just analysis. Creating something beautiful together rather than just achieving individual goals. Margot was quiet for several heartbeats, her eyes never leaving his face. That sounds wonderful. What about you? What do you want? I want to matter, Margot replied without hesitation. Not just as Harold Butler's daughter or Butler Corporation's creative director, but as myself. I want to create things that make people feel something real. She smiled slightly. I want to find someone who appreciates both the artist and the businesswoman, who understands that those are not separate parts of me, but different expressions of the same person. Someone who sees the whole you, rather than just convenient pieces. Exactly. They looked at each other across the small space of his couch, both acutely aware that they had just described what they were finding with each other. Margot, Jeffrey said carefully, I think I am falling for you. I think I fell for you 3 days ago, she replied softly. I have just been waiting for you to catch up. Jeffrey leaned closer, his hand cupping her face gently. May I kiss you? I was beginning to wonder if you were ever going to ask, Margot whispered. Their first kiss was soft, tentative, and absolutely perfect. It tasted like lemon bars and coffee, like possibilities and promises, like the beginning of something that could change everything. When they finally separated, both were breathing slightly unsteadily. This changes things, Jeffrey said quietly. Yes, it does, Margot agreed. Are you ready for things to change? Jeffrey smiled, pulling her closer. With you, I am ready for anything. As they settled together on his couch, Margot's head on his shoulder and their hands intertwined, Jeffrey realized that falling in love with Margot Butler was both the most natural and the most revolutionary thing that had ever happened to him. Natural because everything about her felt like coming home. Revolutionary because choosing her meant choosing love over family complications. authenticity over convenience, and hope over inherited disappointments. For the first time in his adult life, Jeffrey Hall was choosing his heart over his head, and it felt absolutely perfect. 2 weeks of evening dinners, morning coffee meetings, and stolen lunch hours had established a routine that felt both exciting and comfortable. Jeffrey found himself checking his phone constantly for Margot's texts, while she caught herself daydreaming about their conversations during business meetings. They had been careful to keep their growing relationship private, not from shame, but from a mutual desire to understand what they were building before explaining it to skeptical families. This discretion made every moment together feel precious and slightly rebellious. "I have something to show you," Jeffrey said as they walked through Zilker Park after dinner on a perfect April evening. The sun was setting behind Austin's skyline, painting everything in shades of gold and pink. What kind of something? A confession, really. Jeffrey pulled out his phone and showed her a photograph of a painting hanging in his office. "I bought this 3 years ago at a gallery opening. The artist's statement said it represented finding unexpected beauty in familiar places." Margot stopped walking, staring at the image on his screen. "Jeffrey, that is my painting. Butler, oil on canvas, 2021. Jeffrey confirmed. "I had no idea who you were, but I could not stop thinking about this piece. It made me see Austin differently every time I looked at it. You owned my work before you knew me. For 3 years. It hangs where I see it every morning when I arrive at the office and every evening before I leave." Margot looked at him with an expression somewhere between amazement and something deeper. "Do you realize what this means? That I have excellent taste in art? That we have been connected longer than we realized? That painting, Jeffrey, I painted it during one of the loneliest periods of my life. I was questioning whether anyone would ever understand my vision, whether art and business could really coexist in one person's life. And now I know that someone did understand. Someone looked at my work and saw exactly what I hoped they would see, even when I was not there to explain it." Jeffrey stopped walking, turning to face her fully. "Margot, I need to tell you something." "What?" "I am falling in love with you. Not just attracted to you, not just enjoying your company. I am falling completely, irreversibly in love with everything about you." Margot's eyes filled with tears that caught the last light of sunset. "Jeffrey, I know it complicates everything. I know our families will have questions, concerns, probably objections, but I cannot pretend this is casual anymore." "I do not want you to pretend," Margot said softly, "because I am in love with you too, completely." Irreversibly, Jeffrey cupped her face in his hands, thumbs gently brushing away the tears that had spilled over. "What do we do now?" "Now we figure out how to tell our families that their business rivalry is about to become a very different kind of relationship. Are you ready for that conversation? Are you?" Jeffrey considered the question seriously. "I am ready to fight for this, for us. I think my father will understand once he meets you, sees how happy you make me. And I think Papa will respect you once he realizes you are nothing like whatever prejudices he may have developed. But Jeffrey, what? What if they do not understand? What if this creates problems for both our companies?" Jeffrey was quiet for a long moment, weighing love against family loyalty, personal happiness against professional obligation. "Then we will deal with those problems together," he said finally. "Margot, I spent 6 years building Hall Industries into something I could be proud of, but I never felt truly proud of my life until I met you." "I feel the same way," Margot whispered, "like I was accomplishing things, but not really living until now." "So we tell them, together. Soon. Together." Margot agreed, standing on her tiptoes to kiss him softly. As they walked back toward their cars, hands intertwined and hearts full, both knew they were approaching a crossroads that would determine not just their relationship's future, but potentially their family's relationship as well. "Jeffrey," Margot said as they reached her car. "Yes. Whatever happens with our families, I want you to know that falling in love with you has been the best decision I have ever made. Even if it gets complicated. Especially if it gets complicated," Margot smiled. "The best things in life usually do." Jeffrey kissed her goodnight with the passion of a man who had found exactly what he had been searching for without realizing he was searching. As he watched her drive away, he began mentally preparing for conversations that would either unite two families or force him to choose between family loyalty and the love of his life. Either way, he was choosing Margot. The only question was whether he would lose his family in the process. But as he thought about her painting hanging in his office, about 3 years of unknowingly loving her work before loving her, Jeffrey felt convinced that some connections were too strong to be broken by old misunderstandings or family pride. He was about to find out if he was right. The conversation with their families would have to wait 3 more days. Jeffrey was scheduled to fly to Houston for a technology conference, while Margot had commitments with Butler Corporation's quarterly board meeting. The separation felt more significant than it should have after only 2 weeks of daily contact. But Jeffrey found himself counting hours until his return to Austin. "I miss you already," Margot said as they stood in the parking garage beneath his office building, her arms wrapped around his waist in a way that felt both natural and revolutionary. "It is only 3 days," Jeffrey replied, though his tone suggested he was trying to convince himself as much as her. 3 days feels like 3 weeks when you are used to talking to someone every day." Jeffrey tilted her chin up, looking into eyes that had become as essential to his daily happiness as coffee or sunshine. "When I get back, we tell them. Both families. Together. Promise?" "I promise. I am tired of pretending this is casual when it is the most important thing that has ever happened to me." Their goodbye kiss lasted longer than either had intended, interrupted only when Jeffrey's assistant discreet coughed from across the parking garage. "Travel safely," Margot whispered against his lips. "Think about me," Jeffrey replied. "Always." The Houston conference proved to be an exercise in distraction management. Jeffrey delivered his presentation on sustainable manufacturing innovation, participated in panel discussions, and networked with industry colleagues. But his thoughts remained focused on a woman with emerald eyes and an artist's soul who was transforming his understanding of what life could be. On the second evening, alone in his hotel room, Jeffrey found himself staring at a photograph on his phone. Margot laughing at something he had said during dinner the previous week, her face lit with genuine joy and affection. The image made his chest tighten with emotions that were still new enough to feel miraculous. His phone rang as he was considering whether calling her would seem desperate or romantic. "I was just thinking about you," he answered without checking the caller identification. "That is exactly what I hoped to hear." Margot's voice filled his hotel room with warmth. "How is Houston?" "Educational but lonely." "How was your board meeting?" "Productive but boring. Papa asked if I was seeing anyone special." Jeffrey's pulse quickened. "What did you tell him?" "I told him I was exploring possibilities with someone exceptional and that he should prepare himself for some interesting conversations when you return from Houston." "You told him about me?" "Not specifically, but I planted the seeds. I think it is better to prepare him gradually rather than shocking him with sudden revelations." Jeffrey smiled, imagining Harold Butler trying to decode his daughter's cryptic comments. "How do you think he will react when he learns the truth?" Honestly, I think he will be surprised, possibly concerned about complications, but ultimately interested in meeting the man who makes his daughter this happy. This happy? Jeffrey, I have been floating through the past 2 weeks like someone under a wonderful spell. Everyone at Butler Corporation has noticed the change in my energy, my creativity, my general disposition. Papa may not know the specifics, but he definitely knows something significant is happening in my life. The same is true at Hall Industries, Jeffrey admitted. My assistant asked yesterday if I had been taking vitamins or meditation classes, because apparently I have been unusually pleasant to work with lately. Love becomes you, Margot said softly. Love becomes us both. They talked for another hour, sharing details of their days while dancing around the deeper conversation they both knew was coming. When they finally said goodnight, Jeffrey felt more connected to Margot across the distance than he had ever felt to anyone in the same room. The third day of separation dragged with the weight of anticipation. Jeffrey's flight was delayed by weather, pushing his arrival back to nearly 10 o'clock in the evening. He considered calling Margot from the airport, but decided that some conversations required the intimacy of physical presence. Instead, he drove directly to her apartment, a converted loft in Austin's historic district that perfectly reflected her artistic sensibility and professional success. When she opened the door wearing pajama pants and an oversized sweater, hair pulled back in a messy bun, Jeffrey thought she had never looked more beautiful. "You came straight here," she said, not really a question but a statement of pleased recognition. "I could not wait until tomorrow to see you." Margot stepped into his arms without hesitation, and Jeffrey realized that 3 days apart had crystallized something essential about their relationship. This was not infatuation or convenient attraction. This was love with the depth and permanence that could reshape 2 lives permanently. "I made a decision while you were gone," Margot said, as they settled onto her couch with glasses of wine and the comfortable intimacy of people who belonged together. "What kind of decision?" "About our families, about the history between Butler Corporation and Hall Industries." Jeffrey felt his attention sharpen completely. "Tell me. I want to understand what really happened 15 years ago. Not the family versions or the corporate summaries, but the actual documented truth. Why? Because if we are going to ask our families to accept our relationship, I think we owe it to them and ourselves to understand the full context. And Jeffrey..." Margot paused, studying his face carefully, "because something about the whole situation has never made complete sense to me." "What do you mean?" "Think about it. Both our fathers are intelligent, ethical businessmen who built successful companies through integrity and sound judgment. Both families speak of the other with respect despite the rivalry. Does it seem likely that either would have deliberately betrayed a business partnership?" Jeffrey had wondered the same thing countless times over the years. "I have never been able to reconcile the man I know my father to be with the story of corporate betrayal." "Exactly. So what if the betrayal never happened? What if something else occurred? Miscommunication, external interference, legal complications that created the appearance of betrayal without the reality. You want to investigate. I want to discover the truth, whatever it is, with you, together." Jeffrey set down his wine glass, reaching for Margot's hands. "That could be complicated. Corporate records from 15 years ago, legal documents, potentially sensitive information. Or it could be liberating," Margot replied. "Jeffrey, what if the rivalry that has shaped both our families for 15 years was based on a misunderstanding? What if we could heal that wound instead of just working around it?" The possibility sent electricity through Jeffrey's system. "You are talking about potentially changing our family's entire relationship." I'm talking about building our relationship on a foundation of complete truth, rather than inherited assumptions. Jeffrey looked into Margot's eyes, seeing determination, hope, and love in equal measures. Where would we even begin? With the patent documents, the original filings, the legal correspondence, the timeline of events. Everything should be documented somewhere. And if we discover that one of our fathers actually did betray the other— Margot was quiet for a long moment. Then we will deal with that reality together. But Jeffrey, I would rather know a difficult truth than build our future on a comfortable lie. You realize this could take weeks of research, assuming we can even access the relevant documents. Are you trying to talk me out of this? Jeffrey smiled, pulling her closer. I am trying to make sure you understand what you are proposing, because once we start this investigation, we cannot stop halfway through, regardless of what we discover. I understand completely. The question is, are you willing to search for the truth with me? Jeffrey considered the magnitude of what Margot was suggesting. They would be investigating their family's most painful business memory, potentially uncovering information that could be embarrassing or damaging. They would be taking responsibility for healing a 15-year-old wound that had shaped both companies' identities. But he looked at Margot's face, saw the courage and integrity that had made him fall in love with her, and realized that searching for truth together was exactly the kind of foundation their relationship deserved. Yes, he said simply, I want to know the truth. With you. Margot's smile was radiant. Thank you. Thank you for having the courage to suggest this. When do we start? Tomorrow I have contacts at the Austin Business Archives, and I know Butler Corporation's legal files are stored off-site but accessible. What about Hall Industries? Our legal records are stored digitally and physically. I have access to everything. Then tomorrow we become investigators. Jeffrey leaned over to kiss her, tasting wine and possibility and the sweetness of shared purpose. I love you, Margot Butler. I love you too, Jeffrey Hall, and I love that we are brave enough to seek truth together instead of settling for inherited assumptions. As Jeffrey drove home later that night, he realized that their relationship had just shifted into entirely new territory. They were no longer just two people falling in love despite family complications. They had become partners in a mission that could heal generational wounds or confirm generational fears. Either way, they would face the truth together, and Jeffrey had never been more certain that Margot Butler was the woman he wanted beside him for every truth, every challenge, and every possibility the future might hold. The Austin Business Archives occupied a converted warehouse in the University District, its climate-controlled environment housing decades of corporate records, legal documents, and business correspondence from companies throughout Central Texas. Margot had called ahead, explaining their research needs to Dr. Patricia Vance, the head archivist who remembered both the Hall and Butler families from various donations and research requests over the years. I must admit, I am intrigued by this joint research project, Dr. Vance said, as she led Jeffrey and Margot through rows of organized filing systems. In 15 years of managing these archives, I have never had two competing companies collaborate on historical investigation. We are hoping to understand some events from 2009 that affected both our families, Jeffrey explained diplomatically. Ah, the patent situation, Dr. Vance nodded knowingly. I remember when those documents were deposited. Quite a complex legal situation, from what I recall. Margot and Jeffrey exchanged glances. You remember the specifics? Margot asked. Not details, but I remember both companies depositing legal files within weeks of each other, and there seemed to be significant emotional weight attached to the documentation. Both your fathers appeared, well, disappointed rather than angry, if that makes sense. Disappointed how? Jeffrey pressed gently. Dr. Vance paused, choosing her words carefully. Like men who had hoped for different outcomes, rather than men who had been deliberately wronged. But perhaps I'm reading too much into decade-old impressions. She led them to a research room equipped with document viewing stations and protective handling equipment. I will bring you the files from both companies, organized chronologically. Please handle everything with cotton gloves, and let me know if you need assistance interpreting any legal terminology. When Dr. Vance left them alone with the first box of documents, Jeffrey and Margot looked at each other across the table. Last chance to change your mind, Jeffrey said quietly. Not a chance, Margot replied firmly. Whatever we find together. The first documents were routine business correspondence from early 2009, showing the initial stages of collaboration between Hall Industries and Butler Corporation on developing eco-friendly manufacturing processes. Both companies had contributed research, funding, and expertise to what was clearly intended as a 50-50 partnership. Look at this, Margot said, pointing to a letter from her father to Jeffrey's father. Papa writes, Robert, I'm excited about the potential this partnership represents, not just for our companies, but for environmental manufacturing standards industry-wide. Jeffrey found a corresponding letter from his father. Harold, working with Butler Corporation has been one of the most professionally satisfying experiences of my career. Your team's innovative thinking combined with our technical capabilities could revolutionize sustainable manufacturing. They genuinely respected each other, Jeffrey observed. These letters read like correspondence between friends, not just business partners. As they progressed through the chronological documentation, a clear timeline emerged. Both companies had invested heavily in research and development. Both had contributed equally to the innovative processes they were developing together. Both had been excited about the potential impact of their collaboration. And then, in July of 2009, everything changed. Here, Margot said, her voice tight with concentration. The first legal correspondence. The letter was from Butler Corporation's law firm to Hall Industries' legal team, dated July 15, 2009. We are concerned about recent patent filings that appear to duplicate collaborative work between our clients. Please clarify your company's intentions regarding shared intellectual property developed through joint research. Jeffrey found Hall Industries' response, dated July 17th. We are equally concerned about Butler Corporation's patent applications that seem to claim exclusive ownership of processes developed through shared investment and research. We require immediate clarification of your client's position. They were both confused, Margot realized. Neither company understood what the other was doing. The legal correspondence escalated quickly, with each law firm defending their client's interests while expressing bewilderment about the other company's actions. But as Jeffrey and Margot read deeper into the files, a pattern emerged that made both of them sit back in their chairs simultaneously. Margot, Jeffrey said slowly, look at the dates on these patent applications. She spread out the documents, checking timestamps and filing dates. Jeffrey, both companies filed patents on July 10, 2009, the exact same day. That is not possible unless both law firms filed simultaneously without coordinating with each other, Margot finished. They spent the next hour tracing through correspondence between the companies and their respective legal teams. What emerged was a picture of miscommunication that would have been comedic if the consequences had not been so serious. Butler Corporation's primary patent attorney, James Morrison, had been hospitalized with a heart attack on July 8th. His partner, Sarah Chen, had taken over the filing, but had not been fully briefed on the collaboration details with Hall Industries. Hall Industries' legal team had been dealing with their own crisis. Senior partner William Hayes was facing a family emergency that required immediate travel. Associate attorney Michael Torres had been given responsibility for the patent filing with incomplete information about the Butler Corporation partnership. Both attorneys had filed patents, believing they were protecting their clients' interests. Neither had been informed about the collaborative nature of the work. Neither had communicated with the other firm before filing. "This is unbelievable," Margot breathed. Both companies filed patents for the same collaborative work because their lawyers did not coordinate properly. And then, each company's legal team saw the other's filing and assumed betrayal, Jeffrey added. They found the smoking gun in a series of internal law firm memos that had been deposited with the business archives as part of routine legal file management. Sarah Chen had written to her hospitalized partner, "James, I filed the environmental manufacturing patents as instructed, but I'm concerned I may have missed some collaborative agreement with Hall Industries. Can you clarify when you are able?" Michael Torres had written a similar memo to William Hayes. "Bill, I completed the patent filings per your instructions, but Hall Industries documentation references some partnership with Butler Corporation that I was not briefed on. Please advise." Both senior attorneys had been too ill or distracted to respond immediately. By the time they were available to clarify the situation, the legal correspondence between firms had escalated into accusations and demands that made reconciliation nearly impossible. Jeffrey and Margot sat in stunned silence, surrounded by 15 years of family history that had just been completely rewritten. "They were both victims," Margot said finally. "Both companies, both families, all because two lawyers were dealing with personal crises and two associate attorneys were working with incomplete information. Jeffrey, do you realize what this means?" Jeffrey reached across the table, taking her hands in his. "It means our families have been rivals for 15 years over a mistake. It means your father and my father both lost a friendship and a successful partnership because of miscommunication. It means we can fix this," Margot said, her eyes bright with tears of relief and determination. "We can heal this wound." "Are you sure that is what we should do? This information could be painful for both our fathers to learn." Margot considered this seriously. "Jeffrey, if you discovered that 15 years of pain and disappointment in your life had been based on a misunderstanding, would you want to know?" "Yes," Jeffrey said without hesitation. "I would want to know, even if the truth was painful." "Then we tell them, we show them what we found. We give them the opportunity to heal this relationship." Jeffrey lifted her hands to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. "Together." "Together," Margot confirmed. "But first, I think we need to speak with Dr. Vance about making copies of these documents. Our fathers are going to want to see the evidence for themselves." As they organized the files for copying, Jeffrey realized that their investigation had accomplished far more than just satisfying historical curiosity. They had discovered a truth that could transform not just their own relationship, but their family's relationship and potentially both companies' futures. More importantly, they had proven to themselves that they could work together as true partners, supporting each other through difficult discoveries and challenging decisions. Whatever conversations lay ahead with their families, Jeffrey and Margot would face them united by truth, strengthened by shared purpose and confident in their love for each other. Dr. Vance proved to be more than helpful with document reproduction, expressing genuine excitement about their historical discovery. "In 30 years of archival work, I have rarely seen such clear documentation of how miscommunication can create lasting consequences," she said as she prepared professional copies of the key documents. "This will make an excellent case study for business schools." After our families have processed the information, Margot said diplomatically. Of course, but what you have uncovered here is significant beyond your personal interest. This demonstrates how crucial clear communication is in professional partnerships. Jeffrey and Margot left the archives with a folder full of evidence and hearts full of nervous anticipation. They had proven that their family's 15-year rivalry was based on a misunderstanding, but now they faced the delicate task of presenting this information to two men who had shaped their business identities around competing with each other. How do we approach this? Margot asked as they sat in Jeffrey's car outside the archives building. Carefully, Jeffrey replied. Both our fathers are proud men who built successful companies partly through the motivation of honorable competition. Learning that the competition was unnecessary might be complicated, but ultimately healing, right? I hope so. Margot, before we take this to our families, I need to ask you something important. What? Jeffrey turned to face her fully, his expression serious. If this revelation changes everything, if our fathers decide to collaborate again, if the companies merge, if our business relationship becomes completely different, how do you feel about that? Margot considered the question thoughtfully. I think it could be wonderful. Butler Corporation and Hall Industries have complementary strengths. Papa's creative marketing vision, combined with your father's technical innovation, could create something remarkable. And personally, how would you feel about working with me professionally as well as being involved with me romantically? Honestly, Margot smiled, the idea of building something meaningful together, both personally and professionally, sounds like the best possible outcome. What about you? I feel the same way, but I want to make sure we are being realistic about the complexities. Jeffrey, we just spent 6 hours researching 15-year-old legal documents together. We shared discoveries, processed difficult information, and made decisions as true partners. If we can handle historical investigation this well, I think we can handle whatever professional collaboration might develop. Jeffrey leaned over to kiss her, tasting possibility and promise. I love your optimism. I love your thoroughness. Now, how do we present this information to our fathers? They decided on a systematic approach. First, they would speak with their respective fathers individually, preparing them for the information and gauging their willingness to hear difficult truths about the past. Then, if both men were receptive, they would arrange a joint meeting to present the evidence and discuss the implications. I'll talk to Papa tonight, Margot decided. What about you? My father is expecting me for dinner tomorrow night. I will raise the topic then. What if one of them does not want to hear this information? Jeffrey had been worrying about the same possibility. Then we respect their decision and focus on building our own relationship without trying to heal their past. But you think they will want to know? I think both our fathers are intelligent men who value truth over comfort. Yes, I believe they will want to know. They parted that afternoon with a plan and nervous energy that made concentration on normal activities nearly impossible. Jeffrey found himself staring at quarterly reports without seeing the numbers, while Margot attempted to work on a marketing campaign that kept blurring into thoughts about family revelations and business partnerships. That evening, Margot arrived at her father's house for their weekly dinner with carefully prepared talking points and professionally copied documents in her briefcase. Harold Butler was 61 years old, silver-haired, and possessed of the sharp intelligence that had built Butler Corporation from a small design firm into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. He also knew his daughter well enough to recognize when she had something important on her mind. You are unusually quiet tonight, he observed as they finished dinner. Everything well at the company? Everything is excellent at Butler Corporation, Margot replied. Papa, I need to discuss something personal with you, something that might also have professional implications. Harold's attention sharpened. I am listening. I have been seeing someone who has become very important to me. The someone you mentioned was exceptional last week. Yes, Papa, I am in love with him, and he is in love with me. We are considering a serious future together. Harold smiled, genuine pleasure lighting his features. That is wonderful news, sweetheart. When do I get to meet this remarkable man? That is complicated. Papa, he is Jeffrey Hall. The silence that followed was profound. Harold set down his coffee cup with careful precision, his expression cycling through surprise, concern, and something that might have been understanding. Jeffrey Hall of Hall Industries, he said finally. Yes. Robert Hall's son. Yes. Harold was quiet for a long time, studying his daughter's face. How did this happen? Margot told him the entire story, from their accidental meeting at the technology conference, through their growing relationship and mutual decision to investigate the historical rivalry between their families. And what did your investigation reveal? Harold asked, his voice carefully neutral. Papa, I think you should see the documents for yourself. Margot spread out the copied files, walking her father through the timeline of miscommunication, the lawyer's personal crises, and the patent filings that had created 15 years of unnecessary rivalry. Harold read everything twice, his expression growing more amazed and then deeply saddened as he processed the information. Dear God, he said finally. We were both victims of poor communication. Papa, are you all right? Harold removed his glasses, rubbing his eyes tiredly. Margot, do you have any idea how many times over the years I have wondered if I misunderstood something about that patent situation? How many times I questioned whether Robert might have had legitimate reasons for his actions? You questioned it. Constantly. Because nothing about the situation matched the man I knew Robert Hall to be. But the legal evidence seemed so clear. Harold gestured helplessly at the documents. The legal evidence was incomplete. Both families were working with partial information. 15 years, Harold said quietly. 15 years of competing when we could have been collaborating. Papa, how do you feel about Jeffrey and me being together? Harold looked at his daughter with eyes full of love and something that might have been pride. Sweetheart, if Jeffrey Hall is the man who makes you this happy, and if he had the wisdom and courage to investigate historical truth rather than accepting inherited assumptions, then I think he might be exactly the partner you deserve. Margot felt tears of relief spring to her eyes. Really? Really? And Margot, I think it is time Robert Hall and I had a conversation we should have had 15 years ago. Jeffrey's dinner with his father the following evening began with routine discussion about Hall Industries' quarterly performance and upcoming technology investments. Robert Hall was 59 years old, distinguished, and possessed of the steady wisdom that had guided Jeffrey through the challenging transition from son to CEO. But like Harold Butler, Robert knew his child well enough to recognize when something significant was on Jeffrey's mind. You seem distracted tonight, Robert observed as they moved to his study for their traditional post-dinner conversation. I have something important to discuss with you, Jeffrey began, then found himself struggling with how to introduce the topic. Personal or professional? Both, actually. Dad, I have been seeing someone. Someone who has become very important to me, Robert smiled. I wondered when you would find time for romance between conference calls and board meetings. Tell me about her. Her name is Margot Butler. The change in Robert's expression was subtle, but profound. Surprise, followed by concern, followed by something that looked like resignation. Butler, Robert repeated carefully. As in Butler Corporation. Harold Butler's daughter, yes. Robert was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. Jeffrey, you understand the complications this presents. I understand the history between our families. But Dad, I need to show you something that might change your perspective on that history. Jeffrey spread out the documents Margot had shared with her father, explaining their research process and the discoveries they had made about the patent miscommunication. Robert read through everything with the careful attention of a man reviewing a contract, his expression growing increasingly amazed and troubled. "My God," he said finally. "We were both protecting interests that were never threatened." "Dad, are you all right?" Robert sat back in his chair, looking older than Jeffrey had ever seen him. "Son, I need to tell you something I have never shared with anyone. For 15 years, I have carried guilt about that patent situation because I was never entirely certain we handled it correctly." "What do you mean?" "I mean that Harold Butler was a good man, an ethical businessman, and a friend I respected greatly. When the legal complications arose, part of me always wondered if we had misunderstood something, if there was information we were missing that would explain his actions. But you never investigated." "Pride," Robert admitted simply. "Pride and the assumption that if there had been a misunderstanding, Harold would have reached out to clarify. When he did not, I assumed our legal team's interpretation was correct. He was probably thinking the same thing about you." "Undoubtedly." Robert studied the documents again. "Jeffrey, do you realize what this means for both our companies?" "I have some ideas." "What are you thinking?" "I am thinking that Butler Corporation and Hall Industries have spent 15 years developing complementary strengths that could create something remarkable if combined properly." Jeffrey felt his pulse quicken. "A partnership." "Potentially. Harold's creative vision and marketing expertise, combined with our technical innovation and manufacturing capabilities." Robert paused, studying his son's face. "But first, tell me about Margot herself. Setting aside business implications, what kind of woman is she?" Jeffrey found himself smiling as he described Margot, her intelligence, creativity, business acumen, and the way she challenged him to see possibilities he would never have considered alone. "She sounds remarkable," Robert said when Jeffrey finished. "And son, if she had the wisdom to suggest investigating historical truth rather than accepting inherited assumptions, she sounds like exactly the kind of partner you need." "You approve?" "I approve of your happiness. I approve of relationships built on mutual respect and shared values." "And Jeffrey?" Robert stood, moving to his desk to retrieve a business card from his drawer. "I think it is time I called Harold Butler and suggested we have the conversation we should have had 15 years ago." Jeffrey felt relief flood through his system. "Thank you, Dad. Thank you for having the courage to seek truth and the wisdom to find a woman worth fighting for." As Jeffrey drove home that night, he realized that everything was about to change. Two families were on the verge of healing a 15-year wound. Two companies might discover collaborative possibilities that could benefit both, and he and Margot had proven that their relationship was strong enough to handle complex family dynamics and potentially complicated professional partnerships. Most importantly, they had demonstrated that love could indeed conquer inherited assumptions, family pride, and the fear of difficult conversations. Now they just had to see if their fathers were ready to rebuild a friendship that should never have been broken in the first place. The meeting was scheduled for Saturday morning at the Driscoll Hotel, neutral territory that carried no business associations for either family. Harold Butler and Robert Hall had spoken twice by phone, brief conversations focused on logistics rather than emotions. But both men had agreed that seeing the documentary evidence together was necessary for any meaningful reconciliation. Jeffrey and Margot arrived early, claiming a private dining room that offered comfortable seating and enough space to spread out the archival documents. Both were nervous in the way that people become when years of careful planning reach their crucial moment. "How do you think this will go?" Margot asked as they organized folders and checked their presentation materials one final time. "I think both our fathers are intelligent men who want to understand the truth," Jeffrey replied, though his tone suggested he was managing his own anxiety. "Beyond that, I honestly do not know what to expect." Harold Butler arrived precisely on time, distinguished in a navy suit and carrying himself with the careful dignity of a man preparing for an important but potentially difficult conversation. Robert Hall followed 2 minutes later, equally formal and projecting the same mixture of determination and apprehension. The two men had not been in the same room together for 15 years. "Harold," Robert said, extending his hand. "Robert," Harold replied, accepting the handshake with what appeared to be genuine warmth despite the circumstances. Both fathers hugged their respective children, then took seats across from each other at the conference table Jeffrey and Margot had arranged. "Before we begin," Harold said, "I want to acknowledge that this is an unusual situation. Our children have discovered information about our past business relationship while developing their own personal relationship. I appreciate your willingness to examine historical events that might be painful for both of us. I appreciate your openness to this conversation." Robert replied, "Harold, I want you to know that regardless of what we discuss today, I have always respected Butler Corporation and your leadership." "The feeling has been mutual," Harold said quietly. Jeffrey and Margot exchanged glances, both recognizing that their fathers were approaching this meeting with more grace and maturity than either had dared hope. "Shall we begin with the timeline?" Margot suggested, opening the first folder of documents. What followed was a methodical presentation of evidence, with Jeffrey and Margot walking both fathers through the chronological development of their 2009 collaboration, the legal complications that arose, and the miscommunications that had created 15 years of unnecessary rivalry. Both older men read every document carefully, asked clarifying questions, and processed the information with the analytical skills that had made them successful business leaders. When the presentation concluded, Harold and Robert sat in contemplative silence for several minutes. "I owe you an apology," Harold said finally. "No," Robert replied immediately. "We both owe each other apologies." "Harold, I should have called you directly when the patent complications arose, instead of allowing our legal teams to manage the communication. I should have done the same thing. Robert, I spent 15 years wondering if I had misunderstood something about our partnership. As did I. I never felt comfortable with the rivalry because it contradicted everything I knew about your character and business practices." "Gentlemen," Jeffrey interjected gently, "you were both victims of circumstances beyond your control. 2 lawyers were dealing with personal crises. 2 associates were working with incomplete information, and both companies were trying to protect legitimate interests." "Your children are correct," Harold said, looking between Jeffrey and Margot with obvious pride. "The question now is, what do we do with this information?" Robert leaned forward slightly. "Harold, what would you say to the possibility of exploring collaborative opportunities between our companies?" "I would say that Butler Corporation and Hall Industries have spent 15 years developing complementary strengths that could create something remarkable together, such as..." Harold and Robert spent the next hour discussing business possibilities with the enthusiasm of experienced entrepreneurs discovering new opportunities. Butler Corporation's creative marketing and design capabilities, combined with Hall Industries' technical innovation and manufacturing expertise, could potentially serve markets that neither company could address alone. "There is one other matter we should discuss," Harold said eventually, his tone becoming more personal. "Jeffrey and Margot." Robert nodded. "How do both of you feel about our children's relationship?" Harold asked directly. Robert smiled, looking at Jeffrey with obvious affection. "Harold, your daughter makes my son happier than I have ever seen him. She challenges his thinking, supports his values, and brings out the best in his character. If Jeffrey loves her, and she loves him, then I am delighted to welcome her into our family." "I feel exactly the same way about Jeffrey," Harold replied. "Robert, your son has shown remarkable integrity, intelligence, and courage. If he makes Margot this happy, then I could not ask for a better partner for my daughter." Jeffrey felt Margot's hand find his under the table, their fingers intertwining as both realized that their families were not just accepting their relationship, but celebrating it. "There is one practical matter," Robert said. "If Butler Corporation and Hall Industries begin collaborating professionally, and Jeffrey and Margot continue their personal relationship, we will need to establish clear boundaries between business and family matters." "Agreed," Harold nodded. "Business decisions should be made based on business criteria, family decisions based on family priorities." "And if conflicts arise," Margot asked, "then we handle them like mature adults who respect each other and want the best outcomes for everyone involved," Harold replied. Robert stood, extending his hand to Harold once again. "Harold, I would be honored to rebuild our professional relationship." Harold stood as well, accepting the handshake that seemed to officially end 15 years of unnecessary rivalry. "Robert, I believe this could be the beginning of something remarkable for both our families and both our companies." As they prepared to leave, having scheduled follow-up meetings to discuss specific business opportunities, Jeffrey realized that his and Margot's investigation had accomplished something extraordinary. They had not just uncovered historical truth, they had created the foundation for healing generational wounds and building collaborative futures. More importantly, they had proven that love, courage, and commitment to truth could indeed transform inherited conflicts into inherited blessings. Walking out of the hotel with Margot's hand in his, Jeffrey knew that their relationship had passed its most significant test. They were no longer just two people in love, despite family complications. They were partners in building something beautiful that honored both their families and their own dreams for the future. 3 weeks later, Jeffrey stood in his office looking at Margot's painting, the artwork he had unknowingly loved for 3 years before meeting the artist, and marveled at how completely his life had transformed. The painting now seemed prophetic, its theme of finding unexpected beauty in familiar places, perfectly describing his journey from family rival to beloved partner. Butler Corporation and Hall Industries had announced their intent to explore collaborative opportunities, news that had generated significant excitement in Austin's business community. Both companies' stock prices had risen on speculation about the potential partnership, and industry analysts were calling it the most anticipated business development of the year. More personally, Jeffrey and Margot had settled into a relationship rhythm that felt both comfortable and continuously exciting. They maintained their respective roles at their family companies while spending virtually every free moment together, planning not just immediate futures but lifetime possibilities. "Knock, knock," Margot said from his office doorway, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the smile that had become Jeffrey's favorite part of every day. "Perfect timing," Jeffrey replied, moving to meet her halfway across his office. "I was just thinking about how much everything has changed. Good changes, the best changes." Jeffrey accepted his coffee and pulled Margot close with his free arm. "How was your morning meeting with the creative team?" "Productive and exciting. We are developing preliminary concepts for joint marketing campaigns that could launch if our companies decide to move forward with formal partnership." And how are those concepts looking? Innovative, authentic, and designed to showcase both companies' strengths without overshadowing either brand identity. Jeffrey smiled, appreciating both Margot's professional competence and her understanding of the delicate balance required for successful business collaboration. Your father? Enthusiastic but appropriately cautious. He wants to make sure any partnership serves both companies' long-term interests rather than just creating short-term excitement. My father feels the same way. They are both being remarkably thoughtful about the process. Margot settled into the chair across from Jeffrey's desk, but he remained standing, pacing slightly in the way she had learned, indicated he was processing something important. Jeffrey, what is on your mind? Several things, actually. Margot, I need to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly, even if you think the answer might complicate things. All right? How do you feel about the possibility that our relationship might have influenced our father's decision to explore business collaboration? Margot considered the question seriously. Do you mean, are they interested in partnership partly because they want to support our relationship? Exactly. I think that might be a factor, but not the primary factor. Jeffrey, both our fathers are too experienced and too protective of their companies to make major business decisions based solely on family sentiment. They are exploring partnership because Butler Corporation and Hall Industries genuinely have complementary capabilities. But our relationship made them willing to consider possibilities they might have dismissed otherwise. Probably. Is that a problem for you? Jeffrey stopped pacing, looking directly at Margot. I want to make sure that whatever business relationship develops between our companies can survive independently of our personal relationship. Meaning, if something happened to us personally, if we broke up, if we had major disagreements, if circumstances changed, the business partnership should not be threatened. Margot studied Jeffrey's face carefully. Jeffrey, are you having doubts about us? No, Jeffrey said immediately and emphatically. Absolutely not. I'm more committed to this relationship than I have ever been to anything in my life. But Margot, we are potentially looking at a business partnership that could involve dozens of employees, millions of dollars in investments, and significant impacts on both companies' futures. I want to make sure we are being responsible about the implications. What are you suggesting? Jeffrey sat down across from her, reaching for her hands. I am suggesting that we need to have serious conversations about how we handle potential conflicts of interest, professional boundaries, and the integration of our personal and business lives. Such as what happens if our companies disagree about strategic directions and we find ourselves on opposite sides of business decisions, such as how we maintain romantic intimacy while potentially working together professionally. Such as whether we can build a successful marriage while building a successful business partnership. Margot felt her pulse quicken at Jeffrey's casual mention of marriage, but she focused on his broader concerns. These are all valid questions. What answers are you looking for? I am looking for confidence, that we can handle complexity maturely, and that our relationship is strong enough to survive whatever challenges might arise. And what would give you that confidence? Jeffrey smiled, his expression shifting from serious to tender. Margot, watching you handle our family investigation, seeing how you manage difficult conversations with your father, observing your professional competence while maintaining personal authenticity. All of that gives me complete confidence in your character and our partnership. Then what are you worried about? I am not worried. I'm being thorough because this relationship is too important to leave anything to chance. Margot leaned forward, placing her hands on either side of Jeffrey's face. Jeffrey Hall, I love your thoroughness. I love that you think about long-term implications and potential complications. I love that you want to protect both our families and our companies. And I think you are overthinking this particular situation. We have already proven that we can work together effectively, communicate honestly about difficult topics, and make decisions that serve interests beyond our immediate desires. Jeffrey felt some of his tension ease. You are right. I usually am, Margot replied with mock superiority, then became serious again. Jeffrey, there is something I want to say about marriage. Jeffrey's attention sharpened completely. I am listening. You mention marriage as if it were a distant possibility we should consider theoretically. I want you to know that from my perspective, marriage is not a distant possibility. It is an inevitability I am looking forward to with complete excitement. Margot, I am not pressuring you for immediate proposals or wedding planning. I'm simply telling you that I consider our relationship permanent and am planning my future accordingly. Jeffrey stood up, pulling Margot with him, and kissed her with the passion of a man who had just been given everything he wanted, but had been afraid to ask for. I feel exactly the same way, he said against her lips. Margot, you are not just the woman I am in love with. You are the woman I want to marry, build a life with, and face every future challenge alongside. Good, Margot replied, her smile radiant. Then we can stop worrying about whether our relationship can handle complexity and start focusing on building the most beautiful complexity possible. As they stood together in Jeffrey's office, surrounded by the symbols of his professional success, but focused entirely on their personal happiness, both knew that they had found something rare and precious, a love that enhanced rather than complicated their individual strengths, a partnership that made both of them better than they could be alone. Outside Jeffrey's windows, Austin continued its daily business, unaware that two companies were planning collaborations that could reshape the local technology industry, and two hearts were planning a future that would blend family legacy with personal dreams in ways that honored both. 6 months after the historical revelation that changed everything, Jeffrey and Margot stood together in the conference room of Hall Industries, presenting their joint business proposal to a room full of executives, board members, and family representatives. The document in Jeffrey's hands represented more than a business plan. It was the blueprint for transforming 15 years of competition into collaborative innovation. Butler Hall Creative Technologies, Jeffrey began, his voice carrying the confidence of a man who had found his perfect partner in every sense, represents the formal union of Butler Corporation's creative marketing expertise with Hall Industries' technical innovation capabilities. Margot stepped forward seamlessly, her presentation materials reflecting the artistic vision that had first captured Jeffrey's attention. Our market research indicates a $50 billion opportunity in creative technology solutions, products and services that require both technical excellence and artistic innovation to succeed. The room was completely silent. 12 seasoned business professionals absorbed in a proposal that could reshape Austin's technology landscape. Harold Butler and Robert Hall sat side by side, their body language reflecting the rebuilt friendship that had emerged from historical truth-telling. The financial projections, Robert Hall said, reviewing the thick document they had prepared, assume equal investment from both companies with shared profits and shared decision-making authority. Correct, Margot replied. Jeffrey and I have structured this as a true partnership, where both companies contribute their greatest strengths while maintaining their independent identities. Harold Butler raised his hand slightly. And the leadership structure? Jeffrey and Margot exchanged glances, both knowing this question would determine whether their professional dreams could align with their personal ones. Co-chief executive officers, Jeffrey said simply. Margot will lead creative development, marketing, and client relations. I will oversee technical development, operations, and strategic partnerships. All major decisions will be made jointly." The silence that followed felt eternal, though it probably lasted only 30 seconds. Then Robert Hall began to smile, followed by Harold Butler, followed by every other person in the room. "I move to approve the Butler Hall Creative Technologies joint venture," Robert announced formally. "Seconded," Harold added immediately. The vote was unanimous. As congratulations filled the room and champagne appeared from somewhere, Geoffrey found himself standing close to Margot, both of them slightly overwhelmed by the reality that their impossible dream had just become their professional future. "We did it," Margot whispered, her eyes bright with tears of joy and relief. "We did it," Geoffrey confirmed, then added quietly, so only she could hear, "And now I have something else to ask you." Before Margot could respond, Geoffrey was reaching into his jacket pocket, producing a small velvet box that made her breath catch completely. "Margot Elizabeth Butler," Geoffrey said, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room, "you have transformed my understanding of love, partnership, and what it means to build something beautiful with another person. Will you marry me?" The ring was perfect, a classic solitaire setting that honored tradition while featuring a stone cut in an unusual artistic pattern that reflected Margot's creative spirit. But more than the ring, it was Geoffrey's expression that made Margot's heart race. Complete love, absolute certainty, and joy that lit up his entire face. "Yes," Margot said, her voice strong despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. "Yes, Geoffrey, I will marry you." The room erupted in celebration, but Geoffrey and Margot were aware only of each other as he slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her with the passion of a man who had just been given everything he had ever wanted. When they finally separated, still holding each other close, Harold Butler cleared his throat with mock seriousness. "I suppose this means the Butler Hall partnership is going to be even more permanent than we anticipated," he said, causing laughter throughout the room. "I hope that does not create complications for anyone," Margot replied, looking around the room at faces filled with genuine happiness for their success. "Sweetheart," Robert Hall said warmly, "I think everyone here would agree that watching two people build something beautiful together, both professionally and personally, is exactly the kind of complication we are happy to support." As the celebration continued around them, Geoffrey and Margot found themselves in the corner of the room, holding hands and marveling at how completely their lives had transformed. "When do you want to get married?" Geoffrey asked. "Tomorrow would not be too soon for me," Margot replied, "but I suspect our mothers would prefer more planning time." "Our mothers are going to be thrilled beyond words," Geoffrey laughed, "though I think they may also be slightly overwhelmed by planning both a wedding and a business launch simultaneously." "We will figure it out," Margot said, with the confidence of a woman who had just proven she could accomplish anything with the right partner. "Geoffrey, I want to ask you something. Anything. Are you ready for our entire lives to be intertwined, work together, live together, build a family together, make every major decision together?" Geoffrey considered the magnitude of what she was describing, then smiled with absolute certainty. "Margot, I have spent 32 years feeling like I was waiting for my real life to begin. With you, everything feels like it matters more, means more, and connects to something larger than individual achievement. So, yes, you are ready." "I am ready for everything with you," Geoffrey said, sealing the promise with a kiss that tasted like champagne and possibility, and the sweetness of dreams that had just become reality. As Austin's skyline glittered outside the conference room windows, Geoffrey and Margot held each other close, surrounded by family and friends who had just witnessed the formal beginning of both a business partnership and a lifetime love story. In the space of 6 months, they had uncovered historical truth, healed generational wounds, launched a revolutionary business venture, and committed to building a life together that honored both their individual strengths and their shared dreams. Some people spend entire lifetimes searching for what Jeffrey and Margot had found in each other: authentic partnership, mutual respect, creative collaboration, and love that made everything else in life more meaningful. They had found it, claimed it, and were now ready to build something extraordinary together. 3 months of wedding planning revealed that organizing a celebration for 2 prominent Austin business families required diplomatic skills that rivaled international treaty negotiations. The guest list alone included technology executives, art gallery owners, university professors, city council members, and 3 generations of extended family members who had strong opinions about everything from flower arrangements to catering choices. "I am beginning to understand why some couples elope to Las Vegas," Margot said, as she and Jeffrey reviewed seating charts in her apartment on a Sunday evening in September. "Too late for that now," Jeffrey replied, studying the complex social dynamics they were trying to balance. "Though I have to admit, the idea of just the 2 of us, a minister and a witness, sounds appealingly simple." "Do not let our mothers hear you say that," Margot warned. "After 3 months of planning, I think they might be more invested in this wedding than we are." The truth was that both families had embraced the union with enthusiasm that bordered on euphoria. Harold Butler and Robert Hall had become not just business partners but genuine friends, often spending evenings discussing everything from market strategies to grandfathering philosophies. Their wives, Catherine Butler and Margaret Hall, had bonded over wedding preparations with the intensity of generals planning a military campaign. "Have you seen the latest revision to the reception timeline?" Jeffrey asked, holding up a document that resembled a NASA launch sequence. "Please tell me they have not added another speech. Worse, they have choreographed the cake cutting to coordinate with a string quartet performance and professional photography from 3 different angles." Margot laughed, but Jeffrey could see the slight stress lines around her eyes that suggested wedding planning was becoming more burden than joy. "Margot," he said gently, setting aside all the planning documents and moving to sit beside her on the couch. "What do you want? Not our mothers, not our families, not Austin society expectations. What do you actually want for our wedding day?" She was quiet for a moment, leaning against his shoulder and considering the question seriously. "I want to marry you," she said finally. "I want to stand in front of people we love and promise to build a life together. I want to celebrate the fact that we found each other despite every reason why we should not have. And I want to start our marriage feeling joyful rather than exhausted." "Then that is exactly what we are going to do," Jeffrey said with decision. "Tomorrow, we call our mothers and tell them we are simplifying everything. Elegant but simple. Meaningful but manageable. They are going to be disappointed. They are going to be fine once they remember that this day is about our happiness, not their event planning ambitions." The conversation with their families went better than either had expected. Once Catherine Butler and Margaret Hall understood that Jeffrey and Margot wanted to focus on meaningful moments rather than elaborate production, both women channeled their considerable organizational skills toward creating something beautiful but intimate. The result was a wedding that felt both sophisticated and personal. The ceremony would take place at the historic Laguna Gloria Museum, Austin's premier art venue, with the reception in the museum's sculpture garden. The guest list was trimmed to 150 people who actually mattered to the couple, rather than 300 people who mattered to Austin society. "Much better," Margot declared as they reviewed the simplified plans. "This feels like us, rather than like a corporate merger celebration." "Though technically, it is a corporate merger celebration," Jeffrey pointed out with amusement. "Jeffrey Hall, if you refer to our wedding as a corporate merger one more time, I may reconsider this entire engagement." "Noted and apologized for," Jeffrey said, pulling her close. How are you feeling about Butler Hall Creative Technologies? The business launch had proceeded even more smoothly than the wedding planning. With both companies committed to the partnership and initial funding secured, Jeffrey and Margot had spent the summer developing their first joint projects while establishing the operational structure for their new venture. Excited, nervous, and confident all at the same time, Margot replied. The client response has been extraordinary. I think we have tapped into a market need that no one else was addressing. Agreed. And working with you professionally has been challenging, Margot supplied with mock concern. Perfect, Jeffrey corrected. Margot, I was worried that working together might complicate our personal relationship, but the opposite has happened. Seeing your professional competence, your creative vision, your leadership skills, it makes me love you even more. I feel the same way. Jeffrey, watching you manage complex business decisions while maintaining ethical standards and genuine concern for everyone involved makes me incredibly proud to be your partner in every sense. Speaking of partnership, Jeffrey said, reaching for a folder he had brought with him, I have something to show you. Inside the folder was an architectural rendering of a building complex that took Margot's breath away. Modern but warm. The design featured glass walls that would showcase the creative work happening inside while maintaining the functionality needed for serious technical development. This is beautiful, Margot said, studying the details. What is it? Our headquarters, Butler Hall Creative Technologies, needs a space that reflects both companies' values and our combined vision. I wanted to show you the plans before we commit to the lease. The building was perfect, located in Austin's emerging tech corridor, designed to accommodate both creative and technical teams, and featuring gallery space where clients could experience their creative technology solutions firsthand. Jeffrey, this is going to cost a fortune. Actually, it is remarkably reasonable because the developers want an anchor tenant who will attract other innovative companies to the area. But more importantly, Margot, we can afford it. The partnership is already profitable, and our growth projections support this kind of investment. You mean we are actually going to be successful at this? We already are successful at this, Jeffrey corrected. The question is how successful we want to become. Margot studied the architectural plans again, envisioning their shared workspace, their collaborative projects, and the innovative solutions they could create together. I want to become extraordinarily successful, she said with decision, not just financially, but in terms of impact. I want Butler Hall Creative Technologies to change how people think about the intersection of art and technology. Then that is exactly what we will do, Jeffrey promised. Together. As they sat together planning their wedding and their business future simultaneously, both Jeffrey and Margot realized they had achieved something rare, a partnership that enhanced every aspect of their lives while allowing them to remain completely themselves. In 2 weeks, they would be married. In 2 months, they would move into their new headquarters. In 2 years, they projected Butler Hall Creative Technologies would be Austin's premier creative technology firm. But more than any external success, they had found in each other the kind of love that made every challenge feel manageable and every achievement feel meaningful. The morning of November 15th dawned clear and crisp, with the kind of perfect Austin autumn weather that made everyone grateful to live in Texas. Margot woke in her apartment surrounded by bridesmaids, flowers, and the controlled chaos that precedes any important celebration. How are you feeling, sweetheart? Her mother asked, bringing coffee and what appeared to be a detailed timeline for the next 6 hours. Perfect, Margot replied, and meant it completely. Mom, I know this day is going to be beautiful, but more importantly, tonight, I get to be married to Jeffrey. Everything else is just lovely decoration around that central truth. Catherine Butler smiled, recognizing in her daughter the confidence and joy that comes from making exactly the right decision at exactly the right time. Meanwhile, across town, Geoffrey was experiencing his own version of pre-wedding preparations, which involved significantly less coordination, but equally strong emotions. "Nervous?" his father asked, as they adjusted cufflinks and ensured that every detail of Geoffrey's appearance met the standards his mother would have expected. "Not about marrying Margot," Geoffrey replied. "I have never been more certain of anything in my life. I am nervous about forgetting my vows, or tripping during the processional, or somehow failing to adequately express how much this day means to me." "Son," Robert Hall said with the wisdom of a man who had been married to his beloved wife for 28 years before losing her, "the specific words matter much less than the sincerity behind them. Margot knows how much you love her. Today is about celebrating that love publicly, not proving it." At Laguna Gloria, the transformation was remarkable. The museum's sculpture garden had been arranged with white chairs facing a simple arch covered in greenery and white flowers. The setting was elegant but intimate, sophisticated but warm, exactly what Geoffrey and Margot had envisioned. Guests began arriving at 4 o'clock, a carefully curated collection of family members, close friends, business colleagues, and community leaders who had supported both families through years of success and challenge. The atmosphere was festive but reverent, celebrating not just a wedding, but the healing of old wounds and the creation of new possibilities. At 4:30, the string quartet began playing, and Geoffrey took his position at the altar alongside his father and best man. He had thought he might feel nervous at this moment, but instead he felt only anticipation and joy. The bridesmaids processed first, Margot's college roommate, her cousin from Chicago, and Geoffrey's sister who had flown in from Denver. Then came the moment Geoffrey had been waiting for since the day he fell in love with an artist businesswoman who challenged everything he thought he knew about partnership. Margot appeared at the end of the garden path on her father's arm, and Geoffrey felt his breath catch at the sight of her. The dress was perfect, classic but with artistic details that reflected her personality, elegant but not overwhelming her natural beauty. But more than the dress, it was Margot's expression that made Geoffrey's heart race. Radiant happiness, complete confidence, and love that seemed to illuminate everything around her. Harold Butler walked his daughter down the aisle with obvious pride and emotion, pausing at the altar to shake Geoffrey's hand and whisper, "Take care of her, son." "With my life," Geoffrey replied, meaning every word. The ceremony was everything they had hoped for, personal, meaningful, and focused on the promises they were making to each other rather than the production surrounding those promises. "Geoffrey and Margot have chosen to write their own vows," the minister announced, and Geoffrey stepped forward with words he had memorized, not because he had to, but because they came from his heart. "Margot," he began, his voice carrying across the garden to every guest but focused entirely on his bride, "you have taught me that love is not about finding someone who completes you, but about finding someone who inspires you to become complete yourself. You have shown me that the best partnerships enhance individual strengths rather than requiring personal compromise. You have proven that courage, authenticity, and shared values can overcome any obstacle, heal any wound, and build any dream." Geoffrey paused, overwhelmed momentarily by the magnitude of what he was promising. "Today, I promise to love you not just for who you are, but for who you inspire me to become. I promise to support your dreams while pursuing our shared vision. I promise to choose truth over comfort, growth over safety, and partnership over independence in all things. Margot, you are my heart, my inspiration, and my greatest blessing." I cannot wait to spend the rest of my life building something beautiful with you." There was not a dry eye in the sculpture garden as Margot stepped forward to deliver her own vows. "Geoffrey," she said, her voice strong and clear despite the tears of joy on her cheeks, "you have shown me that real love does not ask you to choose between different parts of yourself, but instead celebrates the complexity that makes you unique. You have proven that authentic partnership requires not just emotional connection, but intellectual respect, shared values, and mutual commitment to growth." Margot reached for Geoffrey's hands, grounding herself in his touch. "Today, I promise to challenge you to be your best self while accepting you exactly as you are. I promise to build our professional dreams without sacrificing our personal intimacy. I promise to choose courage over comfort, truth over convenience, and love over fear in all circumstances. Geoffrey, you are my partner, my inspiration, and my greatest adventure. I'm honored to spend the rest of my life creating something extraordinary with you." The exchange of rings, the pronouncement of marriage, and the first kiss as husband and wife all passed in a blur of joy and celebration. But the moment that would stay with Geoffrey forever was looking out at the faces of their guests and seeing two families united in genuine happiness for their success. Harold Butler and Robert Hall stood side by side, both men emotional about their children's happiness and their own reconciliation. Catherine Butler and Margaret Hall embraced like sisters, celebrating not just a wedding, but the joining of families that should never have been separated. As Geoffrey and Margot walked back down the aisle as husband and wife, both knew that they had just experienced something rare and precious. A wedding that felt like the perfect beginning to a marriage that would honor both their individual dreams and their shared commitment to building something beautiful together. The reception that followed was everything a celebration should be, filled with laughter, dancing, heartfelt toasts, and the kind of joy that comes from witnessing love triumph over every obstacle. But the moment that mattered most to Geoffrey and Margot was their first dance as husband and wife, moving together in the sculpture garden under Austin's star-filled sky, surrounded by people who loved them and supported their remarkable journey from family rivals to lifetime partners. 6 months into marriage and 9 months into their business partnership, Geoffrey and Margot stood together in the lobby of their new headquarters, watching as the final installations were completed for Butler Hall Creative Technologies' official opening ceremony. The building exceeded even their ambitious visions. Glass walls showcased the creative and technical work happening throughout the facility, while flexible spaces allowed for collaboration between artists, engineers, and business strategists. The gallery area featured rotating exhibitions of creative technology solutions, demonstrating how art and innovation could enhance everything from healthcare to education to environmental sustainability. "I still cannot believe this is ours," Margot said, admiring the company logo etched into the marble wall of the reception area. "It is ours because you had the vision to imagine it and the courage to pursue it," Geoffrey replied, slipping his arm around his wife's waist in the gesture that had become as natural as breathing. The opening ceremony was scheduled for that afternoon, with Austin's mayor, university representatives, technology leaders, and potential clients invited to tour the facilities and learn about Butler Hall's innovative approach to creative technology solutions. "Nervous about the presentation?" Geoffrey asked. "Excited," Margot corrected. "Geoffrey, we have spent the past year building something that did not exist before we imagined it. Today we get to show the world what becomes possible when different kinds of expertise work together." Their first year of business had exceeded every projection. Major clients included Austin's Children's Hospital, which had commissioned interactive art installations to help young patients feel more comfortable during treatment, the university's engineering school, which was using Butler Hall's creative technology solutions to make complex concepts more accessible to students, and 3 major corporations that had hired them to develop marketing campaigns that blurred the lines between art and commerce. The Johnson account alone has validated our entire business model, Jeffrey noted, referring to a project that had increased a client's customer engagement by 43% through innovative creative technology integration. And the Morrison project is going to change how people think about public art in Austin, Margot added, describing their collaboration with the city to create interactive sculptural installations that responded to environmental conditions throughout the day. As guests began arriving for the opening ceremony, Jeffrey and Margot found themselves greeting not just clients and colleagues, but friends and family members who had supported their journey from the beginning. Harold Butler and Robert Hall had become inseparable business partners and personal friends, often joking that their children had simply formalized a collaboration that should have happened 15 years earlier. Both men served on Butler Hall's advisory board, providing guidance while allowing Jeffrey and Margot complete operational control. "I am so proud of what you two have built," Harold told his daughter as he toured the facility. "This represents everything I hoped business could become: profitable, meaningful, and beautiful." "I feel the same way," Robert added, shaking Jeffrey's hand with obvious emotion. "Son, your mother would have been amazed by what you have accomplished. Not just the business success, but the way you have built something that serves other people while fulfilling your own dreams." The formal presentation began at 2 o'clock, with Jeffrey and Margot co-presenting their company's mission, capabilities, and vision for the future. They had practiced the presentation dozens of times, but speaking to a room full of Austin's business and cultural leaders still felt momentous. Butler Hall Creative Technologies exists to prove that the intersection of art and technology is not just possible, but essential for solving the complex challenges facing our community, Margot began, her confidence radiating throughout the room. Jeffrey continued seamlessly. "We believe that the most innovative solutions emerge when creative thinking and technical expertise work together as equal partners, neither dominating but both contributing their unique strengths." What followed was a demonstration of their work that left the audience genuinely amazed. Interactive art installations that helped children learn mathematics. Marketing campaigns that used augmented reality to let customers experience products before purchasing. Public art that collected environmental data while beautifying urban spaces. "Questions?" Margot invited when their presentation concluded. Austin's mayor raised her hand first. "How do you see Butler Hall Creative Technologies impacting our city's economic development over the next 5 years? Jeffrey fielded the question. "We project creating 200 jobs directly, while attracting other creative technology companies to Austin through demonstration that this kind of innovative collaboration is not just possible, but profitable here. We want Austin to become known as the place where art and technology create solutions that neither could achieve alone." The questions continued for 30 minutes. Covering everything from expansion plans to client acquisition strategies to the company's commitment to local hiring and community involvement. When the formal program concluded, guests moved through the facility for hands-on demonstrations and informal conversations. Jeffrey and Margot found themselves separated as people sought individual conversations about potential collaborations. But they stayed aware of each other across the room with the intuitive connection that had developed through months of successful partnership. "Excuse me," a voice interrupted Jeffrey's conversation with a potential client. "Are you Jeffrey Hall?" Jeffrey turned to find a young woman about 25 years old, professionally dressed, but with the eager expression of someone just starting her career. "I am. How can I help you?" "My name is Sarah Chen, and I'm a recent graduate of the university's business program. I have been following Butler Hall Creative Technologies since you announced the company, and I would love to discuss potential employment opportunities." "Sarah Chen," Jeffrey repeated, the name triggering a memory. "Are you related to attorney Sarah Chen, who worked on patent law 15 years ago?" "She is my aunt," the young woman replied, looking surprised. "How do you know about her work?" Jeffrey smiled, thinking about the complicated chain of events that had brought him to this moment. "Your aunt played an indirect but important role in my wife and I meeting each other. I would be very interested in talking with you about opportunities at Butler Hall." As the afternoon continued, Jeffrey realized that their opening ceremony had accomplished something even more significant than generating business interest. They had demonstrated that their vision for creative technology collaboration was not just personally fulfilling, but genuinely valuable to their community. More importantly, they had proven that their marriage and their business partnership enhanced rather than complicated each other. Watching Margot present their work with passion and expertise made Jeffrey fall in love with her all over again, while seeing Jeffrey manage complex business relationships with integrity and warmth reminded Margot why she had chosen him as her partner in everything. As the last guests departed and Jeffrey and Margot stood alone in their beautiful new headquarters, both knew they had achieved something extraordinary. A business that expressed their values, a marriage that supported their dreams, and a future that promised continued growth in every aspect of their lives. "What are you thinking?" Margot asked as they stood together in the gallery space, surrounded by examples of what became possible when different kinds of excellence worked together. "I am thinking about how far we have come," Jeffrey replied. 18 months ago, we were strangers who thought our families were enemies. Now we are married business partners who have just launched Austin's most innovative, creative technology company. And I am thinking that the best adventures are just beginning." 1 year later, Jeffrey and Margot stood together on the stage of Austin's premier business conference, accepting the Innovation Partnership of the Year award from the Austin Chamber of Commerce. The recognition was not just for their business success, though Butler Hall Creative Technologies had exceeded every growth projection while maintaining the ethical standards both families valued. The award recognized something more significant: their demonstration that collaboration could be more powerful than competition, that different kinds of expertise could create solutions neither could achieve alone, and that personal integrity and professional success were not just compatible, but mutually reinforcing. "This award belongs not just to Jeffrey and me," Margot said from the podium, "but to everyone who believed that Austin could become a place where art and technology work together to solve real problems. To our families, who showed us that healing old wounds creates space for new possibilities. To our employees, who prove every day that the best work happens when people feel valued for their unique contributions. And to our clients, who trusted us to create solutions that had never existed before we imagined them together." Jeffrey stepped forward to add his perspective. 18 months ago, Margot and I met accidentally at a conference much like this one. We discovered that everything we thought we knew about our family's relationship was wrong, that competition based on misunderstanding could be transformed into collaboration based on truth. Butler Hall Creative Technologies exists because we had the courage to question assumptions, investigate historical facts, and choose partnership over inherited conflict. The audience responded with sustained applause, but Jeffrey was focused entirely on Margot's face, seeing the joy and pride that came from building something meaningful together. When they returned to their seats, Harold Butler leaned over to whisper, "I have never been more proud of anything in my life than watching you two build this company and this marriage." Robert Hall nodded in agreement. "Your mother would have been amazed, Jeffrey. not just by the business success, but by the way you have created something that serves other people while fulfilling your own dreams. The recognition continued throughout the year. Austin Monthly featured Butler Hall Creative Technologies as Company of the Year. The university's business school invited Jeffrey and Margot to teach a seminar on collaborative innovation. The state's Economic Development Office showcased their work as an example of how Texas could attract and retain creative technology talent. But the recognition that mattered most to Jeffrey and Margot came from sources closer to home. "You have changed how I think about business," said Dr. Patricia Vance, the archivist who had helped them research their family's history. "Butler Hall proves that companies can be profitable while serving their communities, innovative while maintaining ethical standards. You have shown my students that art careers and business success are not mutually exclusive," added Professor Williams, Margot's former mentor from the Art Institute. "Several of them are now pursuing dual degrees in art and business because of your example." More personally, their marriage had become a source of inspiration for other couples navigating the complexities of dual careers and shared dreams. "How do you make it work?" asked Catherine Butler during one of their family dinners. "Marriage and business partnership simultaneously?" "The same way we make everything work," Margot replied. "Clear communication, mutual respect, and shared commitment to supporting each other's growth. Plus," Jeffrey added with a smile, "we genuinely enjoy each other's company. Working together feels like an extension of spending time together rather than a burden that interferes with our relationship." As their second wedding anniversary approached, Jeffrey and Margot found themselves reflecting on how completely their lives had transformed while feeling more like themselves than ever before. They had built Butler Hall Creative Technologies into Austin's premier creative technology firm, with 47 employees, offices in 3 states, and projects that were reshaping how people thought about the intersection of art and innovation. They had purchased a house in Austin's historic district, renovated to accommodate both Jeffrey's need for quiet office space and Margot's requirement for a studio with north-facing light for painting. They had established a foundation that provided scholarships for students pursuing degrees that combined artistic and technical education, ensuring that future generations would have opportunities to explore creative technology collaboration. Most importantly, they had proven that love could indeed overcome any obstacle when it was based on mutual respect, shared values, and commitment to truth over convenience. "Do you ever miss the simplicity of our old lives?" Jeffrey asked as they walked through Zilker Park on a perfect December evening, retracing the path where they had first acknowledged their love for each other. "Never," Margot replied without hesitation. "Jeffrey, our old lives were not simple, they were incomplete. We were both successful individually, but we were missing the joy that comes from building something beautiful with another person who challenges you to be better while accepting you exactly as you are." "I feel the same way," Jeffrey said, stopping to turn toward her in the same spot where he had first told her he was falling in love with her. "Margot, you have given me everything I did not even know I was looking for." "Which is partnership, purpose, the understanding that individual success means nothing compared to shared meaning." They stood together in the park, where their love story had truly begun, surrounded by Austin's twinkling skyline and filled with gratitude for the courage they had found to choose truth over assumption, collaboration over competition, and love over inherited conflict. Behind them lay 18 months of transformation that had healed generational wounds, created innovative business solutions, and proven that the best adventures begin when 2 people decide to build something beautiful together. Ahead of them lay unlimited possibilities: business expansion, family planning, community leadership, and continued growth in every aspect of their shared life. But in that moment, Jeffrey and Margot were focused entirely on the present, standing together in the place where their love story began, grateful for every choice that had brought them to this point, and excited about every choice that lay ahead. Some people spend entire lifetimes searching for what they had found in each other: authentic partnership, meaningful work, family harmony, and love that enhanced rather than complicated their individual dreams. They had found it, claimed it, and built something extraordinary with it, and they were just getting started. 5 years after their first accidental meeting, Jeffrey and Margot Hall stood together in the sculpture garden at Laguna Gloria, the same spot where they had exchanged wedding vows, surrounded by family, friends, and employees celebrating the 5th anniversary of Butler Hall Creative Technologies. The company had grown beyond their most ambitious projections. With offices in Austin, Dallas, and Houston, Butler Hall had become Texas's leading creative technology firm, working with clients ranging from Fortune 500 corporations to non-profit organizations to government agencies seeking innovative solutions to complex challenges. More importantly, they had proven that their original vision was not just personally fulfilling, but genuinely transformative for their community. Austin had become nationally recognized as a creative technology hub, attracting talent and investment from across the country. The university had established a formal creative technology program based partly on Butler Hall's collaborative model. 3 other companies had launched in Austin, specifically to follow their example of combining artistic and technical expertise. "Ladies and gentlemen," Harold Butler called for attention as the sun set behind Austin's skyline. "5 years ago, Robert and I thought we were rivals. Our children proved we were partners who had simply forgotten how to collaborate." Robert Hall stepped forward to continue. "Jeffrey and Margot have shown us that the best solutions emerge when different perspectives work together. They have built a company that serves our community while fulfilling their own dreams. They have demonstrated that marriage and business partnership can enhance rather than complicate each other. Most importantly, they have proven that courage, authenticity, and commitment to truth can overcome any obstacle." The celebration continued with presentations recognizing employees who had contributed to Butler Hall's success, clients who had trusted them with innovative projects, and community partners who had supported their growth. But the moment that moved Jeffrey and Margot most came when Dr. Patricia Vance, now in her 70s, stood to address the gathering. "I have spent 40 years managing business archives," she said, "documenting the history of companies that succeed and companies that fail. Jeffrey and Margot asked me to help them research their family's past, but what they actually did was create a model for how business should work in the future." Dr. Vance paused, looking directly at the couple whose investigation had uncovered the truth that healed 2 families. Butler Hall Creative Technologies succeeds not despite their commitment to ethical practices, employee development, and community service, but because of those commitments. They have proven that doing good and doing well are not competing priorities, but complementary strategies. As the formal program concluded and guests moved through the garden for informal conversations, Jeffrey and Margot found themselves standing together at the edge of the crowd, watching people whose lives had been touched by their work. Sarah Chen, now Butler Hall's Director of Strategic Partnerships, was deep in conversation with potential clients about expanding their educational technology programs. Professor Williams was discussing fellowship opportunities with recent graduates interested in creative technology careers. Harold Butler and Robert Hall were planning their next joint investment, having discovered that collaboration suited them even better than competition ever had. "What are you thinking?" Margot asked, following Jeffrey's gaze across the celebration. I am thinking about how many people's lives have been improved because we had the courage to question our assumptions about family rivalry, Jeffrey replied. Not just our own lives, but Sarah's career, our employees' professional growth, our clients' business success, Austin's economic development. The ripple effects of choosing truth over comfortable assumptions. Margot nodded. Exactly. Margot, do you realize that if we had accepted our family's rivalry as permanent, none of this would exist? Not Butler Hall, not our marriage, not the jobs we have created, not the innovative solutions we have developed? It makes you wonder what other permanent conflicts could be healed if people had the courage to investigate rather than assume. Jeffrey turned to face his wife fully, seeing in her eyes the same passion for truth and positive change that had made him fall in love with her 5 years earlier. Speaking of change, he said, I have something to tell you. What? This morning I received a call from the governor's office. They want to discuss appointing you to the State Arts Council. Margot's eyes widened with surprise and excitement. Are you serious? Completely serious. They specifically mentioned your work demonstrating how art can serve business and community development simultaneously. Jeffrey, that would be incredible, but it would also mean additional time commitments, travel requirements. It would mean the opportunity to influence arts policy throughout Texas, Jeffrey interrupted. Margot, you have proven that creative thinking can solve business problems and improve people's lives. Imagine what you could accomplish with statewide influence. What about Butler Hall? What about our plans for expansion? Butler Hall will thrive because we have built strong systems and hired excellent people. Our expansion plans will benefit from having a co-CEO with statewide influence and recognition. Margot felt tears of gratitude spring to her eyes. Jeffrey, are you sure you are comfortable with me taking on additional responsibilities that might require time away from the company? Margot, I am proud that my wife is being recognized for her expertise and leadership. I'm excited about the positive impact you could have on arts education and creative technology development throughout Texas. And I'm confident that our marriage and our business partnership are strong enough to handle whatever challenges might arise. As the celebration continued around them, Jeffrey and Margot held each other close, marveling at how far they had traveled from accidental meeting to state-level recognition. They had built a company that proved collaboration was more powerful than competition. They had created a marriage that demonstrated how personal and professional partnerships could enhance each other. They had healed family wounds while building community resources. They had shown that courage, authenticity, and commitment to truth could indeed transform inherited conflicts into inherited blessings. Looking ahead, they saw unlimited possibilities. Margot's potential appointment to the State Arts Council, Butler Hall's continued expansion, their planned family growth, and whatever adventures awaited two people committed to building something beautiful together. But in that moment, standing together in the sculpture garden, where they had promised to love each other forever, Jeffrey and Margot were focused entirely on gratitude for the courage that had brought them together, the love that sustained them through every challenge, and the partnership that made every achievement more meaningful. Some love stories are about finding your missing piece. Jeffrey and Margot's love story was about discovering that two complete people could create something extraordinary together while remaining fully themselves. They had found love, built success, healed families, and created opportunities for others, all because they had been brave enough to question assumptions, investigate truth, and choose partnership over inherited conflict. As Austin's stars appeared in the darkening sky above their celebration, Jeffrey and Margot knew that their greatest adventures were still ahead of them, waiting to be built by two people who had learned that love, courage, and commitment to truth could overcome any obstacle and create any dream. Their story had begun with a simple question. What if everything we think we know about our family's relationship is wrong? The answer had transformed not just their own lives, but their families, their community, and everyone whose life had been touched by their courage to seek truth and build something beautiful together. And they were just getting started. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.